Right. So how do we log in? If you want to log into your Azure subscription, the URL would be portal.azure.com. That's what you need to type. When you type this URL, because I'm already logged in, that's the reason. Let me sign out and then I'll show you what it asks for. So when you type portal.azure.com, it basically shows you a sign-in page. You will need to sign in. You will use the ID that you have actually used to create the free trial account or to redeem the Azure Pass. So let's say I'm using this ID. Then it will ask you for the password. You type your password, hit enter. It says if you want to remain signed in on this system for for some time so that you don't have to provide your credentials again and again, you can hit yes. And it will actually let you log into Azure account. Now this is known as your Azure portal or your Azure account. In the Azure account, you will have at least one subscription because you create resources inside the subscription. You provision services inside the subscription. So there has to be at least one account all the time. So I'm sorry, there has to be one subscription. So you will click on subscriptions. The first thing, now in the search bar, you can type subscription. You type the first few letters and it shows you the combinations in the drop down. You select subscriptions and you will find one subscription which you will see, in your case, you will only find one subscription. The subscription will say Azure Pass sponsorship. Your role will be account admin. Cost will not be shown and status should be active. That's how it should look like. So that's what Azure subscription is. Now, what you need to do, let's understand the portal. First of all, let's understand all the options on the portal. Let's see how do we navigate. Now, since I use this Azure account for my trainings, I have a couple of resources here. However, in your case, when you open portal.azure.com on the home page, you will see Azure services. It starts with create a resource and then you will see some services name or resources name here. Resource and service is one and the same thing. Azure calls every service as resource. For example, virtual machine is a resource. Storage account is a resource. Network is a resource. Everything is a resource for Azure. You can use services also. So I typically use services word. So you see all the services here. Then you see the recent resources. Over here, you will see all those resources or services that you have recently worked with. You will see them displayed here. When you scroll down under navigate, you will see subscriptions, some common resources or services here. Then tools, it talks about Microsoft Learn. I requested you all to create your account on Microsoft Learn and start learning Microsoft Azure. So this is what it talks about. Azure Monitor, which is the monitoring service. Then it talks about Security Center, which is your security advisor. Then it talks about cost management, through which you can manage the cost of the subscription. Then it shows you some useful links that basically takes you to respective Azure documentation. Azure also has a mobile app available. You can install it from App Store or Google Play. It is not a full-fledged version of Azure, but it provides you some basic functionalities through which you can manage your subscription when you are on the fly, when you are on the move and you don't have access to your system. So that's the information that you see on the home page. Now let's move on to the left, wherein you see these three horizontal lines. Now, this Microsoft Azure, the name that you see, if you click here, nothing will happen. But when you click on these three horizontal lines, it opens another drop down, which has some options. It starts with create a resource. Whenever you need to create a resource or a service, you can click here, or there are many ways. I'll talk about all the ways. Home. If you are in the middle of the page somewhere and you need to be on the home page, you can always click on these three horizontal lines and click on home. That way it will take you to the home page. Then comes dashboard. When you have multiple services, provisioned in Azure, and let's say you deal with storage, you're someone who comes from storage background and your job is to manage storage services for Azure. You would want a customized dashboard for yourself in which you only see the status for storage services. So that way you can create dashboards. People who are taking care of networking, they can create a dashboard for networks. People who are more into virtual machine administration, they can create a dashboard for themselves, for virtual machines. Then it comes all services. When you click on all services, it takes you to another page which shows you all the services that exist in Microsoft Azure, which are Azure native services. What they have done, they have created a couple of category and they have put those services inside those categories. For example, if you click on compute, they have close to 27 services in compute. Then similarly in networking, they have 38 services. Some services are common to these categories because they are interrelated to each other. So when you click on storage, you see storage related services. So similarly, these are the categories. If you go to security, you will see all the services which are related to security. So that's where you can see a service. Let's come back to the page. Then you see favorites. Under favorites, you will not find maybe anything, but you will see a lot of things here in the favorites in my case, because these are the services that I typically work with day in, day out. So I've kept them in my favorite. If you want to put a service in favorite, all you need to do, okay, I've got some access error here. So if you want to put a service into favorites, let me just go back to the here on services page. This is just loading. Right. So whenever you want to put a service in the favorite, you just need to, hover your mouse there. It opens the service description page. There you see the star. You just need to hit this star, click on it, left click on it, and it will go into your favorites. So that way you will not need to search for that service again and again. You can just click on these three horizontal lines and in the favorites, you will find that service. So that's how you can put services in the favorites. Let's say I want to put a service in the favorites, a recovery service. I'll go to compute. I'll go to compute and let's see a service which is not there. For example, app service. It is no, it's already there in the favorites. So if a service is not in the favorites, you will see a faded, uncolored star. If it is already there in the favorites, then you will see actually a highlighted star, colored blue colored star, which means that the service is already part of favorites. So example, this service, this is not in favorites. I can just click on the star and now it goes into the favorite. I can go my favorites once again and I'll see that service at the bottom. So this comes in the order that you have added them. So that way I can keep service into the favorites. That's all about these three horizontal lines. Now let's come back to the home page. So we'll click on home and come back on the home page. Then let's go to the right. To your right, you see search bar. You already know the functionality for it. If you want to search for a service, just type the first few letters of that service name. In the drop down, you will find that service. Select it, and then it will take you to that service overview page. Let's move on to the next, which is Cloud Shell. Cloud Shell is typically for programmers. We'll not get into this. Then comes directory and subscriptions. Directory and subscriptions basically means when you create an account with Azure, when you associate with Azure for the first time, it creates an Active Directory instance for you. That's what it is. When we talk about Active Directory, I'll talk about it. Then comes the notification, this bell icon. When you are provisioning services, you will see them in the notification, the progress of those services. If Azure wants to communicate with you, if Azure wants to send you some notifications, you will find them here. So whenever you log into the Azure portal, every day in the morning for the first time, when you go to office, you should always look for the notifications. If there is a message that Azure is giving you, this is, settings wherein you can select directories. If your account is part of multiple directories, let's say you are an Azure administrator and you're supporting 10 customers. Every customer has its own account and directory. You want to get into a specific customer, you can come on directory and you can click on switch. So when you click on switch, it takes you to the directory. The directory becomes local. Then come question mark, which basically means help and support. You want to take some help from Microsoft. You want to raise a support request. You can click on help and support, and it will take you to the help and support page where you can create a support request with Microsoft. By default, billing support is free of cost. They don't charge for it. But if you need technical support, you will need to purchase support plan. Then only you can take the technical support from Microsoft. Now, for example, we are here on this page and we want to go back to the home page. There are two ways. Either you click on these three horizontal lines and click on home, or when you navigate to Azure portal, on the top in this blue horizontal line, you will see your navigation. You are under home and support right now. You can always click on home like this and it takes you to the home page. So these are two ways to come back on the home page. Then it comes your any specific feedback that you want to share with Microsoft. You can always share your feedback. And if it makes sense to Microsoft, they will definitely act upon it. Then move on to the right. You see your name, not exactly your name. You will see the ID through which you have logged in. For all of you, it will say default directory because that's your default directory. And as I said, if your ID is associated with multiple accounts, you can also switch directory from here. It will take you to the same page, which is the setting page. So that's the navigation of the Azure portal UI on the home page. Now, the more you work with Azure portal, the more services you deal with, the more practice you do, you will get more comfort level with the Azure portal with all the services which does exist in the portal. So practice, practice, practice. That's the key to success. Let's provision our first virtual network. So when we want to provision the virtual network, we type virtual and it shows virtual machines, virtual network, virtual clusters. I know that I need to select virtual network. When I click on virtual network, it will show me this is my virtual network blade. On this blade, I will see all the virtual networks that I have in my subscription, all the virtual networks. So right now I have one virtual network, but in your case, you will not find even a single virtual network. So how do we create a virtual network? We need to hit create. On every service blade or service page, you will see this create option. So when you hit create option, it basically takes you to the virtual network creation page, create a virtual network. And here you can provide information, configuration to provision your virtual network. Now, before we provision virtual network, we need to understand a service with the name resource group. What a resource group is. That's a very critical service. You already know what a subscription is. Subscription is nothing but a container in which you are provisioning the, subscription is nothing but an association of yours with Microsoft. When you create your account with Microsoft Azure, you get a subscription. And in that subscription, you can create resources. You can provision services. That subscription is. You can have multiple subscriptions in your account the way I have multiple subscriptions, or you can have one subscription. Then comes the resource group. Now, what a resource group is, focus on this word, resource.
So basically a set of users, or let's say, which usually have kind of similar functionality, or maybe their end goal is similar.
Right. That's not for the users. It is for resources. Basically, users information is kept in Active Directory, which is a different different service. This is for resources. So resources means, let's say, when you are doing this training, you will create a couple of resources or services, which is virtual network, virtual machines. You will have network interface, card, in short, NIC, which contains the IP address. You will have storage accounts. These are the services that you will provision, right? Now, imagine you don't have your own subscription. I have actually provided you access to my subscription, or you belong to an organization and you are and to that organization there are 100 employees, and though they all have access to Azure and they are provisioning their own resources and services. How do you differentiate that which resource and service belongs to which employee, or to which project, or to which department? That's where resource groups comes into the picture. So what you will do after you create your first subscription, you will create a resource group. It is nothing but a container or a directory or a folder which will be tagged to you, and all these services or resources that you will provision for this initiative, for this training, or for any project that you're doing, you will provision that inside this resource group all the time. How it helps you? You will always go to your resource group and you will see, okay, these are the services that belongs to me. Even if finance team or billing administrator needs to send you bill for the consumption of Azure service, they will just go to the billing console. They'll see what is the cost of a resource group. Since that resource group belongs to you, they will just send you that bill and say that, you know what, this is what you are spending on month basis. So resource group is a container service which is used to contain, or which is used to host multiple resources that belongs to the same person, same organization, same project, same initiative. That's the first benefit. The second benefit is billing and chargeback. It helps administrators to bill and charge the business as per the usage from resource group. Another benefit, you're doing a project. As part of that project, you have created multiple resources. Now that the project is over, and you need to remove those resources. If you had not kept them all in a resource group, then you will end up navigating to those resources, and there is a high probability that you will leave something behind as residual, which will unnecessarily continue to charge. Microsoft will continue to bill your account admin for that, or your account team will pay bill for it. So that's the benefit of resource group, which
So this is
exactly means that
editable at any given point of time. We
it is.
can add anything at any given point of time. This is editable, right?
No, resource group is not editable. Resources in the resource group you can add. You can create a resource group today. Just imagine as a folder or a directory in which you will keep all your work. That's resource group. You will create a resource group today, and all the resources that you will provision as part of this training, as part of hands-on lab, you will put in the same resource group. So that once this training is over and I say, Harshit, let's just go ahead and remove everything that you have created in my subscription. You will just go to the resource group and delete that resource group. All the data, all the resources and services that you have created as part of this training will get automatically deleted, because they all are part of the same resource group. That's the benefit of resource group. Rest you will see when you provision these services. These two are mandatory fields. When you provision any resource or service in Azure, these two are mandatory fields. Without providing a subscription and a resource group, you cannot provision a service. So they are the mandatory fields. Now let's just go ahead. Let's just provision our first virtual network. So we are back on the virtual network provisioning page. And if you look carefully, project details, it says subscription and it says resource group. It has red asterisks, which means they are required field. So subscription you will already have. In my case, I can select the one from the drop down. I have multiple, I can select any of them. But in your case, you only have one. So subscription you will always have. Then comes the resource group. You will need to select a resource group. If you don't have one, you can create it here itself. It says create new, but we don't want to do it this way. What we will do, we will in the search bar, we will type resource and we will select resource group. In your case, you will not find even a single resource group. I'm looking at a couple of resource group. That's another thing, but you will not find them. So we'll create our first resource group. So you let create. So we'll select the subscription. Then it says resource group name. Here we will type the resource group name. For the purpose of this training, I can type Azure 104 RG. You can type anything that you want. You can type your name, whatever. So this is my resource group for this training. Then you need to select the region where you are creating this resource group. So I'm selecting East US. I will be provisioning all my resources in East US because East US is the largest data center for Azure. It does not have capacity crunch. Also, that's the reason. And also the cost of the services is cheaper as compared to other regions. So I'm choosing region as East US. Then comes tag. What tag is? Tag is similar. You put a tag on your, on your luggage, you put a tag on your, official bag or your lunchbox, which basically has your information. So if somebody finds that, luggage, if somebody finds that document or somebody finds that article, they can read, okay, this article belongs to this person. So that's tagging is all about. So I'll put a tag.
Raghu, uh, while selecting the name, it is giving an error. Resource group names only allow alphanumeric characters, period, underscore, hyphens, parentheses, and cannot end in a period. So
Yep.
I have
It could,
actually placed it the very same manner you have done, right?
see, when you put a resource group name, whenever you put the name for a service, to your right, you see a green check. Green check basically means that this is okay, this is acceptable. But the
Okay.
moment I put hyphen in the end, it is accepting for me. But if it is not accepting for you, you just remove it.
Yeah, I just did that.
Raghu, do we need to follow the same process with you, or do we need to wait for the to complete this exercise?
No, no, no. Just do it right, with me simultaneously.
Okay.
Okay. So we have put the resource group name, we have put the region. We'll go to next, which is tag. On the tag, we'll put some tag. So I can put the tag like owner, like who is the owner of this resource group, and I can put my name there. I can put another tag, which is purpose, that what is the purpose of this resource group. I'm doing this so that others can recognize who this resource group belongs to. What is the purpose of it, right? So I can put the purpose as Azure training, or RG in short, resource group for Azure training. So I can put multiple tags through which this is multiple tags. So I'm putting two tags, owner and purpose. Owner is myself and purpose is this RG for Azure training. Once this is done, once you are done providing all the required information, the next tag, now on the top, if you see this horizontal line, basic tag review plus create. So you will go next, or at the bottom, you can click on next. Then it reviews the configuration that you have just provided. And once the review is done, it will say validation passed. Once it says validation passed, then you can hit create. If you have provided any incorrect information, the validation will fail. You will see on what tab the information is not right. You will go back to that tab, fix it, and come back to review and create. So my resource group is created. And if you look at the notification icon, notification bell, it says 1. If you click on it, it just says that what you have done. So you've just created a resource group. And on my resource group blade, I will see my resource group, which is here, Azure 104 RG. That's my resource group. So if I click on my resource group, this is my resource group overview page, and it says no resources. Right now, this is just a empty resource group. I have not created anything in this resource group. That's the reason it says empty, no resources. Now, is everyone created the resource group?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Oh, yep.
Let's go back to the virtual network now. So we'll click on virtual networks once again, and we will click on create. And we are back to create virtual network page. If you look carefully on the virtual network, there are more tabs: basic, IP address, security, tags, review plus create. These two will be common to each service: tags and review plus create. Azure gives you an option to tag every resource or service that you create, and it also does the review by itself. So in the subscription, I have one subscription selected. It says this subscription is disabled, you cannot use it. So I'll select other subscription, which is active. So I've selected the subscription. Now I'll select my resource group. So I'll select my resource group that I've just created, which is AZ104RG. Now I've selected these two mandatory fields. Then I'll move on to the information which is specific to my network. First thing, instance details, name. This is where you need to provide your network name. So I put my network name as my name, Raghuveer, VNet1. You can put any name, guys. So this is how I follow the nomenclature. I'll put my name -VNet1. The region has to be East US. That's the information that I give on the basic tab. Then I'll move on to the next tab, which is IP address. Now on the IP address tab, it has already selected an address space for you, which is in class A10 range, right? And it already has a subnet also with the name default. Why it has done that? Because imagine if you are working with Azure and you don't have a background in networking, but you want to provision a VM. To make your life easier, Azure already has this basic information. But since we had spent an hour and a half doing the planning, we will follow our strategy. I'll delete this default suggestion from Microsoft. This delete recycle bin, it's deleted now. Now I'll put my address space that I have taken from the notepad. So my address, you all can put the same address space, 192.168.1.0/24. That's the address space for my virtual network. Then it says, do you need IPv6 address space? I will not check this box. I don't need it. Then it says add subnet. You will need to click on add subnet. The moment you hit add subnet, to your right, it will open a pop-up menu where you need to provide subnet detail. So looking at the same notepad exercise, I will provide my first subnet, which is web subnet, name of the subnet. Then I'll put the address range for the subnet. So my address range for the subnet is 192.168.1.0/27. Now, when I put the range, look carefully. It gives you the first IP address, it gives you the last IP address, and it also tells you 27 plus 5 reserved IP addresses. So it basically means that 27 are usable, 5 are reserved. We already did this exercise. Then it says net gateway, leave everything as it is. Service endpoint, leave everything as it is. You just need to provide subnet name and the address space. Click on add at the bottom. The moment you hit add, you will see it here. Web subnet and its address space, address range. Now you can add remaining subnet in this window itself, or once this network is created, you can add the remaining subnets. The choice is yours. Let's first add one more subnet. So I'll click on add subnet once again, and I'll add my application subnet also. So I'll put app subnet and I'll put the range. Now Azure is intelligent. If I provide any incorrect information, it will give me an error. For example, if I say 192.168.1.23/27, it will give me an error. See, the error is, it says, look at this. It says the subnet address range, the one that you have given, is not contained in the virtual network address space. This is not contained here. The moment you put the right information, it will accept it. See, it is not accepting because this is wrong. But the moment I put 32, 192.168.1.32/27. Oh, I forgot to hit one dot here. Now it has just accepted it. Now the same exercise, if I just replace 32 with 23, it will say that it is incorrect. Why? Because this is already, you have already taken this. This /23 is already part of this web subnet now, because web subnet gives you IP addresses up to 31, and you're putting 23 as your first IP address. Not possible. It says this overlaps. This subnet overlaps with this one, 192.168.1.0/27, which you've already taken here. So Azure is intelligent enough to, to fix the configuration if you provide any incorrect information. So I'll put 32 and it will accept it. See, 192.168.1.32/27, it has accepted it. It is telling me that this is my first address, this is my last address, total 27 plus 5 reserved. I'll hit add. So this way I have added two subnets, web subnet and app subnet. Did everyone, follow me here?
Yes, Raghu.
Great.
Can you wait for a minute? Wait for a minute. I'm just adding this app subnet.
Yep, please do that. Done?
Yes, Raghu, done.
Okay, move on. So we have provided the address space for our network, as well as we have broken that address space into two subnets. Now we'll move on to the next tab, which is security. On the security tab, there are three options. We'll go with the default. If you just enable one of these services, for example, by default, all of these three services are disabled. If you enable these services, then there will be an additional charge. Bastion host, we'll talk about it today itself. DDoS disabled, firewall disabled. So we are just going with the basic. We are not enabling any of them. Then we'll go to the next tab, which is tags. Yes, in the tag, I will need to put a tag. So I'll put the same tag owner, which is my name. And I'll also put the purpose. Tag, which is Azure training. Or I can put it like virtual network for Azure training. So these are the tags that I'm putting. Why I'm putting these tags? So if my colleague looks at this virtual network, he will not delete it, he will not modify it. He'll just go to the tag and see, okay, this virtual network belongs to my friend and he has created it for this purpose. That's the benefit of tagging. Then the next step, which is review plus create. You provided a couple of information. Azure is reviewing it. Yes, the validation passed. We are good. Let's just hit create. So we are provisioning our first virtual network. Let's just wait for this activity to complete. It says deployment in progress. Once this network is deployed, or once this resource is created, you will see an option which says go to resource that you can click on, and it will take you to that resource.
This validation is passed. Can we go on and click create?
Yeah, please do that.
Raghu, can you help me with app subnet? I'm getting an error. It says overlap with the web subnet.
Okay, please put this information there. Make sure that these are the ranges that you're putting for the web and app. This is your range for app.
Raghuveer, which browser you are using?
I'm using Google Chrome.
Okay, the pop-ups that are actually coming for you are totally different for me. But yeah, more or less, the message is same.
Yep. Use Google Chrome only.
Yeah, Chrome only.
Uh-huh.
Might be some version.
Yeah, maybe. right? So my deployment is complete. If I can hit go to resource, and it takes me to my network, which is Raghuveer VNet 1. This is always known as service overview blade. This is the nomenclature because this, this view shows you specific properties of that service network. If you want to go to all the network, you can hit virtual networks in the search, and this is known as service, that specific service page. So on virtual network, now we have two virtual networks. And in my case, I have two, but in your case, you will have one virtual network, and you see the virtual network Raghuveer VNet 1. This is part of resource group. The location is this, and the subscription is this. So when you click on this virtual network, it takes you to the same overview blade. When you come here on the overview tab, whenever you hit a tab, you will see the options will change at the right hand side. So if I click on overview tab, it shows me a quick high level information of my network. So it says the resource group. This is the resource group. Location is East US. This is the subscription. This is the ID. These are the tags, owner and purpose. The address space is this. The DNS
So
is
Raghuveer, by location, those are the data centers, right? Where our
those are the
this
data.
overall virtual network thing
Yeah.
has been embedded, kind of thing, right?
So you have just provisioned this network in East US data center of Microsoft Azure.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, so everyone, please come on the overview tab for your respective network.
Okay.
Great. Now we'll talk about these options later on. Let's just, under settings, you have first option that says address space. Let's click on that option. When you click on that option, you see the address space of your network, virtual network. So see, it says 192.168.1.0/24. Here's the range, which basically shows you the first IP and last IP, and the address count 256. This is exactly what we talked on the notepad previously.
Raghuveer, looks like
Yes,
I missed a step. It's not giving me the deployment option.
deployment option.
Hit on create, after that. Yeah, I tried, but when I go to the overview, it doesn't. It says not deployed.
Not deployed. You
Yeah.
cannot see this message in Azure. Azure never gives this message that says not deployed.
No, I'm sorry, no deployments. It says under deployments.
Okay, is any other person getting any error?
No, Raghu.
Okay, everyone is okay. So Akshay, you are only getting the error, right?
Yeah.
Can you quickly share your screen?
Yeah.
I've just made you host. Okay, in this resource group, you have nothing. Just can you just type virtual network in the search? You have not, there is no virtual network. I don't know what you were doing before. Let's create a virtual network real quick. Bharat, can you help Akshay if he's stuck anywhere? You will need to help him.
Name was written.
Bharat, are you there?
Yeah, Raghu.
Go back, Akshay, go back. You're creating your virtual network name as your name. I'm saying it doesn't make sense to me. At least put some identifier in the name so that people by looking at it would know that it's a virtual network.
Like just your name hyphen vnet1 like that. And you can select the region as East US.
Akshay, once again, my question is, when you look at this name AK-Pune 1, 3 months from now, would you know that this is a virtual network?
Okay, so you want any specific name or generic name?
At least the name, name should recognize what this resource is. For example, what name I have put? I have put VNet in the
Okay.
virtual network name. What about others? Think about your colleagues. If you're sharing this subscription with them, by looking at name, they will never ever know that this is a network. So it has to have some identifier. So you should use network somewhere, VNet, whatever. But you
Okay.
cannot put your name, you cannot use location.
Okay.
Yep.
East and the IP address.
Can you go back? Guys, we will also do virtual network peering as the next topic, wherein we will connect two virtual networks. So the name of the virtual network, should be like virtual network 1, virtual network 2, put some identifier.
Okay.
Okay, put it like this, AK-VNet 1. Okay, great. Location, East US. Now after this, Bharat will help you.
Yeah, you can.
Is the same IP
Okay,
address?
under IP address, yeah, you need to add 192.168.1.0/24. And then we have to add the subnet. So below there is one option, add subnet.
Okay.
Here a subnet name would be web subnet, that web hyphen subnet, any name you can.
Fine.
Yes.
The range for subnet?
Range would be 192.168.1.0/27.
Okay.
Then click on add.
Select this.
Then we need to add app subnet.
You can
Click
add
on
subnet.
add subnet again. Yeah, we need to create one more subnet.
Okay.
And Raghu, I need help here. I'm stuck with this app subnet.
Okay, type the app subnet name first. Type app-subnet. You can put any name, guys. I'm not restricting in the name, but I'm just helping you understand the best practices also. Okay. Then the address space 192.168.1.32/24. I'm sorry, /27. Okay, add. That's it. Move next. Security.
Okay, just select one of those web subnet.
No, uncheck that. Why?
Don't need to select anything. You've already added them. Don't
Okay.
select. Just go next. No changes here. Go next. You want to put tag, you put it. You don't want to, move next.
Okay.
Next. Done. Let's hit create. Validation passed.
now it says initializing deployment. Okay.
Stay there. It will navigate to the deployment page. Submitting the deployment. See, it's the deployment in progress. So what you're doing, this is UI for Microsoft Azure portal. Now, when you select a service, when you select the configuration and hit create, you're basically sending an API call to Microsoft Azure data center to provision that resource for you. Now that deployment is succeeded. Let's type virtual network in the, in the search bar. You don't need to type it again. Once you type a service name, you will always see it in the drop down. Okay, now your VNet is there. Okay, click on this. And you will be on the same page that I am. Now I'll take the control from here. Can you just stop presenting? So I take the control. Great. All right, is this clear to everyone so far? We have just provisioned our virtual network with 2 subnets.
Yep.
Yes.
Great, let's move on.
Yes.
So the first option is under settings, address space. Under address space, you see the address space of your subnet. This is the address space. And as I told you, let's say you've started with this address space, which gives you 256 IP addresses. You have broken this address space into multiple smaller subnets, and you've exhausted all of these IP addresses. Now you have more virtual machines to host in this subnet. Then you can add one more address space like this. You can put the address space 192.168.2.0/24. So that way you can add more ranges to your subnet. So this is where you can and hit save. So you have just added one more range. Now your network has a total of 512 IP addresses that you can allocate to resources. With every subnet that you build, you will lose 5 IP addresses. So that's how you modify the address. You actually add additional address ranges to your network. You cannot modify the existing address space. This is not allowed in Azure. So this part is done. You have 2 address spaces now. Then comes connected devices. In here, it will show you all the devices which are connected to this network. Right now, there is no device. That's the reason this is blank. Then comes subnet. If you look carefully, when you click on subnet, you see those 2 subnets, the one that you have created while you were provisioning the network. So those 2 subnets are listed here. If you need to add more subnets, you need to click on this plus sign subnet. So click on here, it opens the same box to your right, and here you can add more subnets. Now I'll add another subnet, which is my DB subnet. Azure is intelligent. Azure already knows that you have taken that your last subnet was app subnet. The range of that subnet was 192.168.1.3/27, and the last IP address was 63. So it has already selected the next range for you. It already knows. However, the address, the CIDR block that it has selected is 28, which will give you 16 IP address. Out of those 16, 11 will be usable and 5 will be taken by Azure. I need more. If you remember at the notepad, I need more database servers. So instead of 28, I'll make it 27 so that I get more IP addresses.
So Raghuveer, these 5 Azure reserve addresses, how they are being utilized by the Azure, right? Do they kind of have some admin functionality or control over our network, and something
Yes.
at the backend can be done?
Yes,
Are we in some
the
threat?
internal purposes. That's for the internal purposes.
So is there some threat with
No,
that?
that's right.
I actually did some research on that. The 0 address is a network address. .1 is reserved by Azure for the default gateway. .2 and .3 are reserved by Azure to map the Azure DNS IPs to the VNet space. And the 255 would be the network broadcast address.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Henry. This is exactly there in your book as well. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. All right, so once again, we have put the subnet name and we have put the subnet address range. Now this information you don't need, just hit save. So you're adding the third subnet, which is database subnet. You've just added it. Now, if you look carefully, here's the subnet name, then the subnet address space, IPv6 you have not selected. That is why it is blank. Then it says available IPs. In all the subnets, you have 27 IPs available because you have not provisioned any machine so far and rest of the information. So that's how you create subnet. Let's say you want to add one more subnet, which is your management subnet. You just type mgmt hyphen subnet. And as I said, Azure will always give you the range, next range, but it is your choice how many IP addresses you need. So instead of 28, if I really need 16 IP addresses, if I have 10, 11 devices, I can use 28, but I feel that I need to go uniform. So I will use /27 and hit save once again. So that way I can add as many as subnets I can till the time I am not exhausting the entire range. Now, so far I've taken 96 plus 32, which is 122 addresses I have taken. Similarly, I can keep going on, or I will just, whatever address is left, I'll just keep them in my inventory so that whenever I need to add more subnets, I look into my inventory and I'll start. That's what I need to do. Okay. Then comes the gateway subnet. What is this gateway subnet? As I said, if you want this network to connect with other networks in your subscription, in someone else's subscription, or in with your on-premises network, on-premises VLAN or LAN, you need a VPN device at both ends. You need a VPN device at on-premises, which is typically a router or firewall with VPN capability, and then you need a VPN device in Azure, so that both the VPN device can handshake and communicate with each other. So in Azure, for a VPN device, which is known as VPN gateway, you need a dedicated subnet. In that subnet, you will only host your VPN device, no other service. Azure doesn't allow. That's the reason they have put a separate option, which is gateway subnet here. So we will create a gateway subnet also by clicking on this. Now, there are some best practices for the gateway subnet. The first best practice is that the gateway subnet should be created at the rear end, at the end of the address space range. So my address space gives me up to 256 IPs, and I'm taking my subnet CIDR block as /27. Every subnet is giving me 32 IPs, 27 usable, 5 reserved. If I go by the same logic, my last subnet that I will create would start with 224. That will be the IP of the last subnet if I go with the same logic. So 224 plus 32 is 256. So once again, gateway subnet should be created at the end of the address space. This is the end of the address space. If you see, the last IP is 255. And with this subnet, my entire address space is exhausted, but I will still have some IPs in between. After 122 till 224, I will have some IPs in between, and I can use them for creating more subnets. So gateway subnet should always be created at the end. Second consideration, gateway subnet should be created with /27. That's Microsoft recommendation. Now you will feel that why should I waste 32 IP addresses for just one device, one service? That's how it is. Gateway is a redundant service. Your VPN is very critical to your organization. It shouldn't be down at any point in time. In order to ensure high availability of the VPN, Azure creates a delegated subnet with the name gateway subnet. Azure suggests you to keep that subnet at the end of the address space, and Azure also says that please use /27 with that subnet so that we can ensure high availability. And since Azure is not charging you for IP addresses, you should not mind doing it. Yes.
Richie, I'm assuming that the gateway subnet, is that a reserved name? So if you wanted to create a subnet called gateway subnet, it wouldn't let you?
It's a reserved subnet. That's what I'm saying. It's reserved for gateway service only.
Yes, yes. But if I'm going to try, if I try to
You
create
cannot,
a gate,
you cannot put any name. It's reserved. The name will be like this. That's the reason when you hit gateway, it has just faded that option. You cannot give the name.
yeah, okay, no, that's fine, that's fine.
And then you select the IP address and you hit save. So guys, all of you will select the same IP address range for gateway subnet, the one that I have just selected. And if you see, the moment the subnet is created, for rest of the subnet, it says 27 IPs. But for this subnet, it says availability depend on dynamic use. It all depends how many, how many devices are communicating over the VPN, what is the bandwidth, all of that. So in other words, you cannot use this subnet for hosting your virtual machines. That's what it means. It's a dedicated subnet. Now, when we will provision our first VPN gateway or VPN device, we'll do that today itself. When we will provision it, you will see that by default, it will take that subnet. It will take gateway subnet. It will not even ask you that what subnet should I get provisioned in. The moment you provide the network, the moment you provide your network name, it will by default take this subnet because it knows that in that network, I have a subnet delegated for myself. So that's the subnet part, guys. We are done with this. Then comes DDoS protection. DDoS is a type of attack, security attack, which is known as distributed denial of service attack, in which an attacker sends multiple malicious requests to a server, to a website. Every website has a limit in terms of how many user sessions it can accept at any point in time. That hacker will, bombard the site with malicious requests, and the authentic users won't be able to connect because the site will say page cannot be denied. Because let's say a web server cannot accommodate more than 500 sessions at any point in time. That hacker will send 500 fake sessions. Web server will be 100% occupied. Now, when the authentic user tries to connect to that portal, authentic user will get an error, page cannot be displayed, or resource not found, HTTP 404, because the web server cannot accept that 501st request from the user because it already has more than that it can support. That's distributed denial of service attack. To protect your network from that attack, you can enable this service. Right now, this is disabled. You can enable this service, but there's a charge for it. We will not enable it. I've just told you what this service is all about. Similarly, you can use Azure Firewall, which is a native service from Azure, or you can use your existing firewall solution that you use on premises, like Cisco ASA, Checkpoint Firewall, Palo Alto Firewall, Checkpoint, other firewall devices that you have. So we are not enabling it. In security, you get any recommendation. There is no recommendation right now. DNS servers. Okay. When you create a network in Azure, Azure provides its own DNS services to your resources. However, if you have your own DNS server, then you can click the radio button custom and you provide your DNS server IP address. So if you have your own DNS server, you can put the IP address here. If you want to use your Azure default DNS server, let's not make any changes. In a production environment, you will have custom DNS. So in the production environment, you will have an Active Directory domain. That Active Directory has a DNS server installed, DNS role installed on it. So the IP address of the Active Directory server or domain controller is put here. So that all the server in your domain, when they need to look for certain resource, they will always reach to that DNS server for the information for the resolution. So I'll cancel it here. Okay. So we are done with our first network. Peering we'll talk about later on. So I have my one virtual network with a couple of subnets inside it, and I still have some IP addresses left in my subnet. That's all about creating a network in Azure. Is this clear to everyone so far?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
This is the current configuration we have. For every lab that we are doing, I have a slide deck, which I use. This is what you have right now. You have an Azure subscription, because I'm using my Azure training subscription. You have a resource group in that subscription. Inside that resource group, you've just created a virtual network. The range of that virtual network is this that you see here. It has got a couple of subnets. And right now in each subnet, there is no resource. These are individual subnets. We have web subnet, app subnet, DB subnet. We also have a management subnet, gateway subnet. I'm not depicting it here in this image, but we have a couple of subnets. So this is the typical architecture of what we have created so far. Is that understood to everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, as a next step, what we need to do, I know it's also time to take lunch break. Let's just spend 5 more minutes, then we'll take lunch break. As a next step, what we need to do, we need to create one virtual network, at least one machine, one virtual machine in one of these network. And then what we also need to do, we'll create another network. We have one virtual network with one virtual machine that we will create. Let's just create another network. And then when we come back from lunch break, we'll create virtual machines in these network and we'll do our next hands-on. So we need to create one more virtual network so that I can show you how do we connect virtual networks. Let's create the another virtual network. What you need to do, once again,
Raghuveer, prior to that, can you just explain once the DNS part? As of now, we are only selecting the default one, right? Custom one would be utilized for what all functionalities?
When you when this is a production network, when you host virtual machines in this network which are joined to your corporate domain, then you will put your domain controller IP address in the DNS.
Okay.
For because your domain controller has a DNS service, your domain controller has information about all the internal applications which exist in your corporate, as well as all the internet websites that exist on the network. So that's the reason you will put your domain controller. Imagine if you put Azure DNS, if you continue to select Azure DNS, and let's say you type the URL of some internal application, Azure will not get any response because Azure doesn't know that application. Azure only knows what is there on the internet. Azure doesn't know what is there inside the network. That's the reason we'll put our domain controller or the DNS server.
Yeah, now I
Typically,
can actually relate why a few applications actually fail at times, right? If there are certain upgrades or any such thing, I can surely relate. Thank you.
great. All right. So let's create another virtual network, guys, real quick. We have created first virtual network. My first virtual network name is Raghuveer VNet1. I'll create another virtual network with the name Raghuveer VNet2.
So Raghu, just a curiosity question. Cannot copy this network to create another one?
You cannot create two networks with the same address space. What is the point of doing that then? Why would you do that? There will be a IP addresses, redundant IP addresses. That's the reason we cannot copy.
We can change it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So we'll create another network now. Let's do it quickly, all of you. I'm putting the network name as VNet2 East US. I'll go to the address space and I'll select 192.168.2.0/24. I'm getting a warning. Can somebody tell me why I'm getting a warning when I'm selecting this range?
It looks like it's overlapping with your
You have
VNet one.
added this network already in the networks in
VNet one.
VNet 1.
VNet.
Yep, that's the reason. So I already have used this range or address space in my previous network. That's the reason it says it overlaps. It is just a warning, guys. It is not stopping me. I can still create this network. As somebody just asked that, can we copy it? Yes, you can do it, but I'll tell you the repercussions of it. Tomorrow, when you want these networks to communicate with each other, not possible because they are overlapping. The virtual machines inside the network will have the same IP address. So that's the reason we should not have overlapping IP addresses. So instead of 2.0, I will use 3.0. And see, the moment I use 3.0, it's green. So Azure is intelligent. Azure already knows that how many networks I have, what is the address space I'm using there, and Azure is actually helping me to, to actually select an address space which is not taken by any other existing networks. It is giving me the warning as soon as I select an existing address space, but it will not stop me if I want to continue. So I've selected 3.0/24. Similarly, I'll quickly add my web subnet 192.168.3.0. Now everywhere I'll use 3.0/27. That's my web subnet. Then I'll add app subnet. Which is 192.168.3.32/27. Same exercise as we did in the previous. Here I will add DB subnet also on the same view. 192.
I'm seeing some default subnet in that.
You will need to remove it. The moment you remove the address space, which is 10.0, that will also be removed. All right. I have all my three subnets here, which I need, web, app, and DB. I'll go to security, net tag, review plus create, and I'll hit create. That's it. So I've just created my second virtual network. I'm able to do it real quick because I have done this exercise almost 1,000 times so far. Since you will be doing it for the first time today, you will take some time, but practice is the key to success. Once we are done with this training in the evening, what you can do, you can remove everything and recreate it all over again so that you can practice.
Can you please keep that notepad open for the IP addresses?
Sure. But now for the second, you will be using
3.0.
what is the third octet. You will not use the same address. Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead. So Raghu, can you show again, please, those, because I'm getting some error actually in giving the app subnet.
Just give me 1 minute. What screen you want to see? Subnets?
Yeah, the subnets for the second one. Yeah, so I'm giving this app subnet IP, that's 192.168.3.32 and 27. So I'm getting one error, invalid argument. So I don't know what is that.
Please make sure that you're typing it correctly. Is that resolved?
Yes.
Okay.
We have not created management subnet here.
Yep. On the second, you don't need to.
Okay, okay.
And for tags under purpose, we have kept the same value, right, as the previous one?
Yeah. Tag is just for your internal purposes. Okay. Going forward, I will not put tag for any of the resource because I want to save that, a couple of seconds. But I have already told you the significance of tags, and for any production resource when you build, you must use tags.
So Raghu, where can I see this second network now? VNet 2.
When you go to the virtual network, Blade,
I can see only one. I don't see my second one.
maybe it is not created yet.
Yes. Yeah. Now I can see. I refreshed it. Yeah.
Yep, you need to refresh the screen at times, guys. All right, so a second network created for everyone.